Hello everyone, and we are on week 4 of FYE 101. This week you had to read chapter 5 in your book, Getting the Most Out of Your Class. In this video I will go over the PowerPoint. Some quick reminders. So for this week, for Wednesday, you have your weekly check-in number 4, complete your note-taking assessment worksheet, and join our Zoom class number 4. Make sure you read chapter 5, go through this PowerPoint. There is a short video on typing versus handwriting notes. There is actually a difference in why it matters. You will have a discussion post, and don't forget the student office hours assignment is due this week as well. So in this PowerPoint, we're going to go over chapter 5, getting the most out of class. And just an announcement, remember that student office hours assignment is due this week. This is where you had to meet with each of your advisor or your instructors, including myself. You ask them a question, you record their answer, and then you had to fill out the charts on the worksheet. If you did a Zoom meeting, a video meeting with your instructors, make sure that you got a confirmation email from them saying, yes, we did do this. And then don't forget there's a task B to that assignment where you have to reflect on all of that, and that's at the end of the worksheet. That is due this week, and that needs to be typed up, okay? Don't forget goals paper number is due for week 6, all right? So you can use the goals that you used on your SMART goals worksheet from week 2. Most of the ones that got turned in, all the goals were really good, okay? So remember, for that goals paper, you need a long-term and a short-term goal for your academic, professional, and personal areas in your life, okay? And so you can use those goals, but you need to really type it up and expand on what you did from the worksheet, okay? So I would suggest break that assignment down. You know, one night work on your academic goals, the next night do the professional, and the next night do your personal growth. And then if you get something typed up, even if it doesn't look pretty, you want feedback on it, email it to me and I'll give you feedback on it before it's due. All right, so in chapter 5, they talked about active learning. And active learning is learning through engagement and participation in activities. So as a teacher, I would see this in the classroom from you guys. And students would be talking to each other, helping each other out, asking questions and answering them. It's when you're participating in an online class discussion or an in-classroom discussion, when you're asking questions, when you're in study groups, you're solving problems. You're going beyond the lecture material and required reading. Okay, so it's showing your instructors that you're actively participating in thinking and using the information presented in class. Remember at the beginning of the semester, I had talked about, making sure you create a relationship with your teachers, because down the road you might need a reference letter from an instructor for a scholarship, an internship, a job, anything like that. And so one of the things as a teacher, when I have to write that kind of letter, is I always look to see how active you were in class. Were you the type who was always asking questions? Were you prepared? Were you helping others? Were you on time for class? Were you always there before I opened the door? Things like that. So that is all stuff that I look back on to see what kind of an active participant you were in class. And so when we think of active learning, think of why it's important that we active learn. What can you get out of it as students? Do you do it in your current classes? And if you do, what is it that you specifically do that makes you an active learner? But maybe you don't do it in all classes. Maybe you're not actively learning in all of your classes. And so ask yourself, why is that? Where's the disconnect in those other classes where you're not using it? And how can you keep being active learning in your classes and in the future? So some advice I had in the book, you want to do the assigned reading, okay? Doing the assigned reading will help you understand new terms, your concepts, listen better, and pick out the most important information when taking notes in class, okay? So if you have a lecture that week on a chapter in math or science or in nursing, you want to make sure that you are prepared by you've looked at the textbook, you looked at the chapter, and you know what is going to be talked about in class. And make sure as you're in class listening to everything, you take good notes, okay? Good notes are going to help you ingest that information. So highlighting or underlining key phrases, it's important. And don't forget, here's a picture here. This is from your syllabus. This is actual photo of the school supplies pantry in the writing lab in D120. So if you can get to campus and you need some supplies, they've got pens, pencils, post-it, highlighters, paper, folders, binders, all that kind of good stuff there. And it's all free to you. All right, so when we have to finally sit down at home or at school and we have to read our textbooks, do you look like this? Do you find yourself, okay, I've got my phone, I've got the TV on, I got my snack, maybe there's other people at home too, or maybe you find yourself falling asleep on your books. You know, you're thinking, okay, maybe I'll just read it through osmosis. I'll absorb it as I'm here. So we have a lot of distractions going on, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in week 3 too, especially with time management, trying to make sure that we're not as distracted in those environments when we have to study. So it's always important to kind of think about that to make sure that we kind of concentrate and focus when we can. But you can't just sit there for hours on end like this. You want to make sure you take breaks. So some other advice they gave in the chapter was make sure to pay careful attention to your course syllabus. So each course, they'll give you a syllabus with expectations, requirements, breaking down the guidelines, assignment due dates, and that's all it's all what you are responsible for that semester. So always use that as a reference guide to always refer back to during the semester. I wish I could give you a paper copy, but unfortunately we're all online, so you got the online version. But if you can print it off, that's always good, especially when you can make notes on it of your own ideas and stuff, what you need to remember. Also make use of additional materials provided by your instructor. So a lot of instructors will post lectures and things like that onto Cobra, so you always want to check that for lectures and assignments. And if you're someone who learns better on paper than on the computer, I completely understand that. I'm sometimes like that as well. Feel free to print stuff off if you need to, okay? And then highlight and write on that piece of paper yourself. Also, a reminder, when you go to your classes, make sure you kind of warm up for your class, review your introductories and summaries from the chapter, go over your notes. You want to make sure you pay attention and understand and remember what you previously went over. And instructors expect you to have kind of gone through that little warm up before class. And you want to stay organized. Make sure you have the supplies that you need to be as organized as possible, whether it's getting a binder or you want folders and spiral bound notebooks. That's fine. It's up to you. It's whatever works for you. Post-its and highlighters are also a good supply tool for school. So they talked about note taking. All right. So students who do not take notes in a lecture, this is how they lose the information. So 20 minutes after a lecture, they will have forgotten 47% of the information. 1 day after the lecture, it's 62%. 2 days, 69%. 10 weeks, 75%. And 15 weeks, they might as well not bother going, okay? So it really is a really fast breakdown of the information after they've heard it, especially when they have not written notes. So your book gave several ways of taking notes. I've actually added in another way here, just in case you're more a visual person. This way might help you. All right, so the first way they talked about was the Cornell method. This has had a lot of good success with people. You take your notebook paper, you draw your line down the middle. In the right column, that's where you take all your notes during the class. And then as soon as class is done, whenever you can, in the left column, you're going to recall what are the major points from all those notes that you learned, and then writing a quick summary at the end. So this is more of an engaged approach. It's not just writing your stuff down and then just going back and reading it again. It's really kind of engaging with it, recalling and writing your own summary, and that's why it tends to work the best. The next method they talked about was the outline method. I tend to do this one myself. It's a basic outline that starts with general information on the left, and then as you indent, you get more specific. This can get as detailed as you possibly want. So here we have Shakespeare. He was a playwright. He was English. He wrote 39 plays, comedies. Here's examples of those. Histories, examples of those. Tragedies, that. All right. So this can be a quick, easy way to do notes, especially when you're in class in a lecture type setting. The one that they didn't include in the book that you might like is the mapping method. Now this can get really messy for some students, and I don't know if it's necessarily one that would work during an actual class setting. I think this is more of if you did the Cornell method or if you did the outline method. The mapping method is a way to help you review the information. So you would put your main idea here in the middle, and then from there you're going to have major branching off from there of concepts. And then from those concepts, even more details. And so here they actually color coordinated all of that. And so this could be a way for you to study, kind of talk to yourself in a way of explaining each of the concepts and how they divide out and all the details and stuff like that. The other method they talked about was the paragraph method. This works more when you're reading. It doesn't really work when you're in the classroom. And here it's where you've read a section and then you write in a paragraph in your own words in several sentences the main ideas and details in that paragraph. So this is definitely a method that would be harder to do in the classroom because teachers don't often break so that you can go and write a summary paragraph. But this is, again, another way of taking notes as you're reading. And then finally, the last one, the list method. This is very similar to the outline method. You're using letters, numbers, and bulleted points. I use that with the outline method too. So it's kind of a combination of the list and the outline that I use. And this is what it looks like here. This really works with terms, definitions, facts, things like that. And this can also be what your right column looks like in your Cornell method. If you're using the Cornell method, that's kind of what that right column would look like. All right, so those are 5 different ways of taking notes. Find what works best for you. Maybe it's a combination of them. Nothing's wrong with that. Some final reminders about taking notes. You want to focus on the lecture reading that you're doing at that time. You want to be selective with your notes. Don't try to write everything down. You're not going to, especially if your teacher's lecturing. You want to just get the main concepts. You want to put it in as your own words as much as possible. You want to get to the point. Stick to the major facts and details and important information. Don't get sidelined on other information that isn't as important. Make sure that your handwriting is legible for yourself afterwards so that you can read it when you have to review it. And then don't worry about grammar and spelling. All right, notes aren't something that you're turning in. So don't get all worried about grammar and spelling. Okay, these are for you to study. So as long as you can read it, you understand it, that's what is important. Okay, so those are the major concepts in chapter 5, getting the most out of your class. There was a lot more information, some tips about, what to do when you get to class, where to sit, things like that. So kind of think about those things as you go through your classes. Granted, it's different since we're on an online setting because it's a different kind of format than a classroom campus course that you have to take. So use the best information and guidance and try things out, see what works for you and see what doesn't. If you have questions about this or anything else that is due for week 4, let me know. Don't forget, student office assignment is due this week, and then start getting ready for that goals paper in a couple of weeks. You guys stay warm, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.